You ready?
That's good. I can actually hear you there.
Yeah, you can hear me? Okay, good. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Film Hustlers.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's Film Hustlers. Here we are, David Dave, once again. But we are without Rod Rinks, whose name is actually Tootie. And because he's got to work, man. People got to work in this town. It's only you, me, and David Dave get to run around and interview people all the time.
Yeah. It's all fun and games for us, but not for Tootie.
Dude, you're working at Fuego.
Yeah,
Is that true?
Yeah, Fuego is working out really nice.
But I noticed like you're at like the Mets game or the Dodger game or the New York Yankee game. I mean, like, are they sending you all over the United States?
Yeah, running around. We're trying to make a nice little push towards the end of the season so we can interview some players and
It's amazing. So, what is the purpose of the company? Can you explain that, or?
It's just to share human interest stories, basically, and then with the twist of lime and tapatio.
So a little in fuego twist.
Yeah, for the Latin, just to infuse the culture.
Well, it's working. So not full on Latino, but just a little bit. Like Mexican American.
Basically, what I am.
Yeah. Okay.
You know what I mean?
Is that what it's all about?
Yeah.
We're gonna find out because we got Ben Odell on the show today.
Yes, we do.
You know who Ben Odell is?
Yes, sir.
Dude, Ben Odell. Let's welcome him, Ben Odell. Welcome to the show. I'm a big fan.
I'm a big fan of yours. That's why we work together.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. But before it's really important that we inform everyone who's listening because we get new listeners every week. One thing I'll tell you about the show is we like to inspire. We like to kind of give people ideas of how they can potentially make it. A lot of people are sitting in East LA, San Diego, Midwest, who knows where, thinking, hey, I might want to be in show business. And, a lot of the guests we have on, like yourself, took a road to get here. It's not always the most traveled. I think show business of all places is probably the least. You get there in the most unusual ways.
Well, there's no set path.
There's no set
problem.
path. But the one thing I think we all have in common is the desire and what we were talking about, the hustle.
Yes, and probably fragile egos that we need to fill with outside recognition.
That's it.
Yeah. Well, I want to say before we get any further is that Ben Odell is partners at a company called Tripas, which is really funny because when I first met you, I never associated tripas with actual what it means.
Right.
Because you think three pas, right? You think it's a three and a pas, but that's actually not what it is.
A lot of people think it was three PAs who started the company together.
So what does tripas mean?
Tripas, guts.
Guts.
But it took me a while because I started in Colombia and really learned the sensibility of Colombians when I wrote there. And when I started doing content in Mexico, I had to kind of relearn comedy. Every country is very different. And Mexico, they love wordplay. So when we started our company, we wanted to do something that was some kind of wordplay.
Were you born into a family that spoke Spanish?
I was not, but I did grow up with a Colombian family from the time I was pretty young. And I would pick up words here and there. And then I took Spanish in 7th grade or 8th grade. And I did sort of my 5 years of high school Spanish. I didn't really learn Spanish till I moved to Colombia in 1992.
And why did you move to Colombia?
Well, there's the official reason, and then there's the unofficial reason. So the official reason was that my dad, who's way smarter than I am, he said to me, you love your family, your Colombian family. You love going to Colombia. If you look at the U.S. census right now and where it's going to be in 2000, the Latinos are going to start ruling the roost. And if you could really understand what that audience likes, you could become an expert. And that could be the angle that makes you unique in the entertainment business. I was just starting out at the time. Now, what I heard was, hey, you could go to Colombia for a year. And I had been there and I had fallen in love many times and I'd had some really good times there. And I was like, sure, I'll go to Colombia for a year. I wasn't really thinking about my career. Truthfully, it ended up being exactly what my dad, had sort of laid out. I found my way once I got there into the entertainment industry, but I went there because the girls were pretty and the drugs were cheap, frankly.
What age did you go there?
When I went there to live there, I was 22.
22, okay. Yeah.
It was 1992. So if you know the history of Colombia, the decade of the 90s was the worst decade in the history of the country.
Yeah. Oh my God. And so you worked yourself into show business in Colombia. By this time, were you speaking Spanish fluently?
So I when I got there, I took a crash course at University de los Andes, which is kind of the Harvard of Colombia. That said, I didn't apply. It was a Spanish is a second language course. So I got a crash course. I'd had, the basics of grammar that I learned in high school, which actually was very useful because the past imperfect, yo hubiera ido a la tienda si estuvieras ahí. That's like, you got to learn that because when you hear it, you don't really understand. So, I had that base, but it took me a couple of years to really be able to speak it. And I started writing in Spanish before I spoke it. I got a job before I could actually speak it.
That's remarkable. So so not only did you work your way into show business, you worked your way into show business in a country that you were not originally from and had to learn the language. that's
learn the language, learn the culture. And, it was a time before formats, like nobody was. Now we think about local language content in a very different way than we did then. Like nobody in the U.S. was thinking about what they're making in Colombia back then. Now I think that's not the case, but at the time it was a very different world. But that was also where the opportunity was. You're an American, you get there. I had taken, a couple of screenwriting courses when I was in college. I didn't go to film school, and that made me an expert in Colombia. At the time, this is pre-internet. Like there just wasn't, it was just a very different time. So I weaseled my way in. You talk about film hustlers. I hustled my way into the business and got a job on a kids TV show called De Pies a Cabeza. Mm-hmm. And I had a girlfriend who was a seamstress. And so she was always sewing dresses. And so she could just cradle the phone in her ear. And I would say, how do you say this? And I literally would write the scripts with her on the phone translating until I had picked, because she spoke English. Yeah. Until I had picked up enough Spanish to do it myself.
Well, that's pretty amazing, right, David? Jesus. I mean, I think part of learning a language that is the way to do it is to be in the country and just have to do it, right? To do it the way Ben did is pretty remarkable. But I also read that some of the stuff that you did in Colombia was like the biggest grossing film at the time, or the most watched television show. I mean, obviously you're someone that should be in the business. You were doing things that were unique and interesting to the point where they were breaking records there. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. I created a show called Fuego Verde with the Time news correspondent. It was all about the Emerald Zone in Colombia, which is like the Wild West. You can carry a couple $1 million of emeralds in your pocket, but there was no law enforcement in that area. It was just these patrones that controlled these areas, all arms. All the women there were either prostitutes or ex-prostitutes. I mean, it was the Wild West, but wilder than the Wild West. And so we wrote a TV show around that world. And, it was an action-adventure series. And we were, I watched Colombian television. I was like, it seems like everything on television is for women. It's all telenovelas, and where's the sort of action adventure series or something that men can sink their teeth into? Nobody had cable at the time. It was probably penetrated 2-3% of the population. So there wasn't access to anything. So if you could give them, I'm not saying it was good. I'm just saying there was an audience that was not being fed. So all of a sudden they saw something they'd never seen before, and it was action, and it was funny too. So it became the highest rated show on television. It was on for 2 years. So 100 episodes in 2 years, no seasons. So you just go straight through. Wow. And at one point, kind of 10 weeks in, it climbed up to around 42. It got as high as 45 Nielsen. Now, that's a third of the households in the country at any given time watching that show. Yeah. And in the Emerald Zone, there were so many people watching it that they had electricity problems, and the power plant would shut down. So,
that's remarkable.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations. I mean, that
was a long time ago.
Yeah, that's a big thing. But I mean, look, I think we talk about it a lot. You think about, people that have grown up in the business, or grown up dreaming about ideas, grown up about entertaining people, and sometimes, you're born to do it. I mean, obviously, you were born to entertain folks and to figure out what people want to see. And it started at an early age and you continue to do it now. But that's pretty cool. I mean, look, in a world where we're currently living, it's, there's a lot of Latinos, there's a lot of minorities, there's a lot of different types of things on television. It feels like it's changing. It feels like, you look up and there's like, a show about a reservation, Indian reservation, which I'd not seen before. There's a lot of Spanish language stuff. You got VIX Plus coming out as a streamer for Spanish language, which I think you guys have a deal to do stuff there. But how do you feel about what's happening? Because I feel like you're an advocate for Spanish language content, for Latinos in film, for Latinos in television, whether it's English or Spanish. How do you feel about what's happening in the world of TV and film right now?
Well, look, I think there's, some people call it the new mainstream, right? So the new mainstream is a diverse audience, including Latinos, but not only. I think the new mainstream has embraced aspects, or Hollywood's embraced aspects of the new mainstream. I don't think Latinos are getting their shake yet. The honest answer is there's I think Hollywood still. And, you talk about Hollywood like it's this monolithic thing. It's not a thing. It's a bunch of people. And at the end of the day, all they want to do is make money and be successful. So whether they're white people buying shows, if they think a Latino show will be successful, they're going to put it on. However, because they don't know and they don't understand necessarily the nuances or the specificity, it's harder to get them to see what might have value. And because of that, it's harder to sell shows. And once you sell them, like the feeling is, we have our Latin thing. Like they'll try one, they'll try maybe two, one in development or two in development. And that broadly sort of takes care of this kind of invisible mandate to check a box instead of just saying, bring me great content. I would say if I do have one, I won't even call it a criticism, but one concern I have around the content that's been made recently, it's that in my experience, and again, I'm a straight white male commenting on this, and I say this all with respect. I frankly, I've spent my entire career focused on this market and focused on how to crack it. So I feel like I have some data that I've gathered over the years of doing it, and I have a big staff. Everybody's Latino, including my partner, except for me. And my observation is that too often the content is so focused on Latino bubbles, right? It's a Latino family with Latino neighbors and Latino, and then I look at every Latino I know in the U.S., and I can't see any of them living in a Latino bubble. They all have diverse friends, diverse experiences, their work life. And so what I worry about is that Hollywood is sort of saying, this is what we want. We want this thing. We want this thing for Latinos. They don't understand it. So they just kind of, and then the Latinos are saying, I think this is what they want. So we're going to give them this thing. And then that thing fails. Whereas like I remember I had this conversation with an animator once. Really cool guy. He'd done a couple of interesting shows. I can't remember what they were now, and he said to me, look, guys, I'm excited to talk to you, but like, I am Latino, but like, I don't really embrace that part of my identity. I was like, that's a valid point. All we're looking for is Latino creators, whatever their version of what Latino is. In other words, in his version, he doesn't lean into it at all. That's completely valid. Yeah. I think the best piece of Latino content created over the last 50 years is Hamilton. I mean, Hamilton's not a Latino play. There are Latinos in it. There are many different diverse people in it, but ultimately it's a guy who grew up in the Heights, who was exposed to both immigrants. His father was an immigrant. I think his mother was too. His neighbors, also, Latinos. And then he was also exposed to hip hop, and he was exposed to Broadway because he grew up in New York. And that came out of those experiences. Whatever he produced to me is Latino content because it was a Latino creator.
Right.
And that's ultimately, I think, what we're trying to get to is just tell your stories. And I think that there's so often, I don't know, I feel like there's this kind of feeling in Hollywood that if you're doing something for Latinos, it's got to look a certain way. I mean, the most successful show I can think of over the last 20 years is probably Jane the Virgin, which at its heyday had a 30% Latino audience watching it, which is over-indexing, right? It's 17% of the population. But there was 70% of that audience that was not. Now, the heart and soul of that show was very Latino. It was like kind of making fun of telenovelas. It had a sort of heightened quality to it. But the cast was not all Latino. The stories weren't about being Latino because there is no such thing as a Latino. My kids are Latino. My wife is Colombian. My kids are Latino. They grow up in the Palisades in LA. I don't know. They're never going to look at a piece of content and be like, oh, that's Latino. I identify with it. Right.
No, I think you're right. I mean, that was really well said. I mean, I think what we want to lean towards is effortlessly diverse projects. Yeah. You know, when you look at something like, I don't know, I want to say Fast and the Furious for some reason, but like Fast and the Furious, you don't go, oh, that's a Latino movie yet, or it's a minority filled movie. Like you don't think that about it yet. It is. Yeah, you know, it really is. It really is about the hood and about, about cars and about car culture. And I think that
it's about family at its core.
It's about family at its core. Yeah.
And by the way, like you look at Fast and Furious, like it was an accident that it turned into what it became. Now they sort of stake a claim with it. They've done an amazing job of building that out. I'm not taking anything away from it, but it wasn't intentional. They didn't go into it intentionally to do that thing. I think it was, Vin Diesel, who's sort of, he is what you want him to be.
Yeah, that's
He's
right.
apparently like some percentage Dominican, but nobody really knows. He looks Italian. He is what you want him to be. And I think, by the way, that's the American melting pot.
It really is.
I think that's a valid way to approach things. But I just think ultimately, the other thing that I get a little bit frustrated by is this whole idea of like, if we're Latinos, we all have to watch Latino content. It's like, no, you don't. You got to watch things you want to watch. And if we as content creators are not creating content that other people want to watch, that's on us. It's not on them. Nobody has any obligation to watch anything because it checks a box.
Right.
And by the way, nobody's going to. They're going to watch it because they're interested in it. And so we have to make things that are interesting. And ultimately, Latinos are the mainstream, 1,000%.
Yeah.
And if you want them to watch something, it's got to be cool as shit.
Yeah.
It has to stand out in the marketplace, period, full stop.
They're not going to go see something because it's Latino or whatever, and I think that that's an interesting thing about everyone trying to find the Latino gold, because I think the Latino gold isn't good content,
But you do want to see, to me, there's two kinds of aspirational movies. The first bucket, and I'm guilty as charged, I've made movies like this, but it's like, hey, these kids who are coming from slender means and they do something incredible and look at, and that's aspirational, but it's also telling a story where they're starting from the bottom. So you're saying, oh, this group's starting from the bottom.
Philly Brown.
Right, exactly. So the other version of aspirational is showing, having $100 million Hollywood movie starring a Latino. It's not about being Latino. It's simply that guy is starring in this movie. That to me is that's the kind of aspirational that I think Latinos really long for. They want to see themselves reflected in the cool mainstream Hollywood content. And look, it's hard where I stand for me to get there because you have to get into the studio. I mean, I make studio movies, quote unquote. They're on the lower side of the budgets, and but to Marvel doing a movie, or Bad Bunny is going to star in it, and I hope that movie is cool as shit, because Bad Bunny in a cool shit superhero movie is going to be
great,
enormous.
Yeah, and
the Latinos are going to over-index insanely because they fucking love that guy.
Yeah,
but it's not because it's Latino. No. It's not because it's Latino they're going to see it. It's Bad Bunny and it's cool as shit. Now, if you make a shitty one, you might get the audience first weekend, and they're gonna be like, "What? Why do you keep making this shitty content for us?" I also think no one is forgiving any longer. We have so much content that we can just access at home. So, you're not going to spend an hour on a crappy show just because it checks some box. You don't have enough time. Anyway, that's where I feel like our obligations are.
I think it's interesting. But there is so many different boxes that we're all in as Latino content creators. I think that there's sort of room for everything, but it's very clear what doesn't work, because you're going to have to, whatever story you're telling is going to have to leak into everyone else. Like, you can't just have Latinos watching a show. That I don't think that's the way to go.
You can't sustain, especially now. Everybody's so splintered. Like, Eugenio's my partner. He has a very big audience. But now when you put content on one platform or another, you're not getting his whole audience.
Yeah.
And so you have to rely on other audiences finding it as well in order for it to work.
Well, something being good. Now, since you mentioned it, Eugenio Derbez is your partner. He's a juggernaut. He's like one of the biggest stars in the world. Everyone loves him. Like, not just Mexican people, not just Latinos.
People who discover him. Not everybody's discovered him over time.
But slowly, this guy has like made, movie after movie, show after show. And the one consistent thing is that you guys are always successful in these outings, which is amazing. Like, I'm sure that to you guys, there's different levels of it. But from where we sit, everything he seems to touch turns to gold, even if he's just starring in it. Like, right, I saw him in Coda. Is that what it's called?
Coda, yeah.
Okay, saw him in Coda. Amazing, part.
And
beautiful movie.
The reality is, like, look, there's behind the scenes, there's a lot of decisions being made about what he should and shouldn't be doing. And Coda was exciting to him because the script was great. The director was amazing. Like, he talked to her a lot. I spoke to her as well before he signed on, because you want him to take swings that are going to make a difference. And, look, it's been the last 8 years has been, the first thing he said to me, the way we've been friends for 20 plus years, and I'd made a bunch of movies with him before we were partners. And then he made Instructions Not Included. I was working at Lionsgate at the time, Pantaleon, which was their Latin division. And so when that movie became the success it was, a $5 million movie, made $100 million at the box office, still the highest grossing Spanish language movie ever in the history of the world. And, it gave him the opportunity to kind of go out and build. And the first thing he said to me was, I want to make English language content. And for me, that was a huge puzzle, because you knew his audience would show up in Spanish. And if you can make a $5 million movie that makes $100 million, like, my instinct is make a couple more, Right. But he, to his credit, like, he wasn't, he said to me, like, I don't do this for the money. If the money comes, it comes because it comes. I do things because I'm excited about them. And I love the challenge of trying to cross over into English. For me, like, I was the guy who had to go out and find the content. And so I kept saying, okay, we got, we sort of talked about what should your next move be. The hardest thing was to, Instructions Not Included has a great ending. One of the, when movies end a certain way and surprise you, like The Sixth Sense, it sets you up for failure, because everyone's expecting every movie you make to be surprising. I was like, let's go the opposite direction. Let's just do a fun comedy. We're going to do it in English. Let's surround you with as many stars as we can, and do something that, even if your face is on the poster, the title, your face, and all those other actors' names sells the movie. And that's how we got the How to Be a Latin Lover. And, it was a great exercise. We made it for 11. It made $65 million in global box office. And, that was a small success that really kind of built the foundations. And then, we did Overboard intentionally, because we wanted to take something that everybody was fully aware of, knew we would piss off a lot of mostly white people. They're like, how could you ruin our romantic comedy? And at least he would, for his core, they're still going to come out for it, which they did. And we love the idea of, like, flipping the roles and looking at, my favorite scene in the movie that no one ever talks about is when the rich Mexicans come to pick him up. He doesn't know who he is. He's lost his memory. And they show up in this white trash house, and they feel really uncomfortable around these poor people. And I was like, this has never been seen, but it's real.
Yeah, that's funny.
So, it was a nice way to be able to break stereotypes, but doing it with something that, like, and I remember when on Good Morning America, I forgot what's the name of one of the blonde, she was interviewing Jack Rico, who was a critic on the East Coast, really smart guy. I'd had a really great conversation with him about the movie. And so he was on, she's like, what are you excited about this? He's like, I'm really excited about Overboard. And he starts to get into it. And she goes, Overboard, the only thing I want to know is, where's Kurt Russell? And then she moves on to the next thing. I was like, this is the problem. Wow. Yeah.
Was instructions not included in Spanish?
Yes.
See, that's the thing, is because I speak both languages, I don't remember. I don't remember that it was in Spanish. I could have said it was in English, and it would have worked.
It was 70% English. 30%
There was a little bit, right? That was a great movie. That was another one of those that just had a great third act. Like, there was something great about that third act that pulled it all together. I can see people leaving a theater happy that they just, happy walking out of that film. It was a good flick.
Oh yeah, I mean, look,
Heartfelt.
Very heartfelt, really funny, and then very heartfelt.
And very heartfelt.
It had physical comedy. I remember seeing it when we were testing it, and I had seen it once before. And there's a scene in the movie where they're in a truck crossing the border, and the guy hits the brakes, the truck driver, and I think it's like a plate of fries or something flies up in his face. And I was like, really? The pie in the face? So I had to say something to Eugenio. I was like, pie in the face? And this is how smart Eugenio is. He's like, I know. But I got to give, I want there to be comedy for every kind of audience.
Yeah.
And so that's a very broad thing for a certain kind of audience. When I was in the theater, we tested it in Van Nuys, I think, and that was the biggest laugh.
Oh, really? That's true. Yeah.
So, but he knows that. I mean, he's very calculating that. Like, he really wants the biggest audience possible to watch his movie.
Pretty awesome. What's going on with the TV stuff you're doing? What are you guys doing next? What's the plan?
We have a lot of unscripted shows that we do. We have a couple for Amazon.
Don't forget about Acapulco.
I will tell. Of course, I'm going to promote Acapulco. But we have a show called LOL, which is in its 5th season, which is 10 comedians in a room trying to make each other laugh. If you laugh, you're eliminated. Last person standing gets $50,000. Eugenio's the host. And it's been a huge hit for Amazon on a Latin American level and actually on a global level, depending on who you ask. And then we have Eugenio Derbez, which is the whole Derbez family.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And many other unscripted shows. And then we have Acapulco on Apple, which the 2nd season drops October 21st. I don't know when this podcast drops, but
it's Friday.
So there you go. On the day of release.
So today's the day. Go check it out. And is that streamable? You can stream the whole thing.
Yeah.
Right away.
No. It's 2 episodes.
Two episodes.
One a week.
That's cool.
The old school model.
Yeah, man. The old school model. That's what I hate about HBO Max. I want to see more House of Dragon.
I love suffering a little bit.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, I do, because I think it's like that instant satisfaction. It doesn't leave you time to kind of decompress and take it in and talk to your friends about it. And I miss that about television. So I actually really much more. I like Apple's model. I think Apple's doing amazing content.
Yeah, no, I agree.
They've really kind of hit their mark.
What do you think? What's the future look like? Like, if Ben Odell's thinking about 10 years down the road?
I don't know. It's so hard to tell. I mean, I thought we would have been further along at this point.
Yeah, that's tough. It's
hard to make that prediction. But look, I mean, there are inroads being made. I mean, I think one of the things I'm most proud of in our company is that when our employees leave, which I hope that they're happy and don't, unless they're not very good, and then, but I try to hire well. I have a great team, and when and if they have to leave, they end up going to Netflix or HBO or Warner Brothers and doing great things. And I'm hoping that all these companies that are employing Latinos that can slowly make their way to the top, and we can see more executives at the highest levels who represent. And then I think that's going to open up a lot of doors. But look, the business is going to change so dramatically year to year. What I always say is, like, whatever the business model is today, it's not going to work tomorrow. So you have to constantly be shifting. Yeah. And you have to be really light on your toes to keep in touch with the evolution of the audience. What I'm certain of is that where it is all headed is Web3. I don't think anyone today can predict what Web3 is going to look like, honestly. I think it's going to be very different than all, when you look at any of these innovations, when they start out, the earliest, look at NFTs. You sell like a little digital picture of a dude, and that's like that business is sort of already gone, except for the ones that are already out there in the marketplace. But Web3, what I think it really is going to lead to is that the relationship between the viewer and the creator is going to be one-on-one, where, right now we have a lot of middle people inside. Yeah. And I think that's going to happen more and more. So that's part of it, but you have to keep the metaverse and whatever that It's not going to be one thing. And as some people will remind you, it already exists when you look at video games, and it's already out there. Right? People are already living in a metaverse in certain ways, but that's going to continue to evolve and change. That's going to affect how much content's being created, all this consolidation. It's really hard to predict, but I think, it is a creator's universe. The thing that I mourn, but there's not much you can do about it, it's better not to look back, is, there's no water cooler experiences anymore. You just remember when we were kids, like I went to see Star Wars in the theater, and there was a line around 2 blocks. I got there right at 7 p.m. when the show was about to start, just as they put the sold out sign on there. And my mom looks at me and says, "Don't worry, we'll come back next week." And from that point forward, I'm always 30 minutes early to any movie, even when we have reserved seats, because I was so traumatized by it. But it was that special.
Yeah.
That's gone.
Yeah.
Like the feeling like that you can watch something that can really end up, in the zeitgeist and where people are talking about it and affected by it. I think it's gone. I mean, Coda was a beautiful movie. Like, is anyone talking about Coda anymore? No. I mean, they're talking about it for 6 months, but it's gone.
But that you're right about. Like, you could watch. I remember watching Grease, watching Saturday Night Fever. God, there was so many of them, and you'd watch
Jaws.
them. Yeah, you'd watch them for 3 months,
Indiana Jones,
4 months,
yes,
5 months, over and over again. You actually go to the theater and watch them because you couldn't really have them at home. So and a movie would be in your mind and in your heart for probably a year or two. And
I went and saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood 4 times in the theater.
Dude, it's a great movie.
It was so great.
Such a good movie.
Just the tapping into the nostalgia of what has been lost was.
Well, one thing I want to point out that I think is important, Eugenio Derbez said he doesn't do it for the money. He does it because it's exciting to him.
He wants to do things that are challenging.
I think that's a really great way to look at what you do, what you plan on doing.
I think the rule of thumb is it's got to be something that you want to see that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
If you find those projects, and I'm not, by the way, like if I look at my filmography, I can't say that about a lot of the stuff I made. Right. I mean, just to be honest, you're also making a living, so a lot of it is the hustle, right? Yeah. But in the best of cases, it's like, oh my God, I want to see this story come to life. How do I do that? And I want to see it. That's the only thing that's going to drive you for the anywhere from 12 months to the longest it's taken me to get a movie made is probably 7 or 8 years. The Valet took us 7 years to get.
You guys did The Valet too. I should have had a list of all the stuff that you guys have done. You've done a lot of good work. But yeah, sometimes it takes a while.
Certified fresh.
And you and you don't give
so
up.
is Acapulco.
Yeah, and you don't give up. You don't give up. If 7 years to make, it's because you didn't give up on it, or it wasn't just adrenaline. It was actually an idea that you cared about, that people cared about. That's neat. That's pretty cool. Let me ask you this. Have you ever heard of ExtremeMusic.com?
No.
Okay. ExtremeMusic.com is a website where there's thousands of composers, thousands of songs. I guess they're a library of music. An extensive music library. I think they're owned by Sony. But anyway, they're one of our sponsors. They're the reason that we do the show. But we use it all the time. I use it on all my movies. And if you like it, you can buy it for a fraction of the cost of using a composer. So I want you to check them out, Ben.
ExtremeMusic.com.
That's right. Check them out, ExtremeMusic.com. They're the best in the biz. Well, Ben, I think we've covered a lot of ground. I think you're very inspirational. Your story, your personal story, we could talk about for an hour, but what you've done, where you came from, how you got there is amazing. How you've gotten into Latin content is amazing. All the work that you guys have done with Tripas, I want to say that right, with Tripas and with Eugenio is remarkable. And you're a special kind of company, special guy. We appreciate you being on the show, inspiring people. And I think the goal is to just get people thinking and talking and creating content that makes a difference.
All right. Amen.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it. Thanks for listening to Film Hustlers. We'll see you next time. Awesome. All right. Thanks, bud. Yeah. That was cool. I appreciate it.